And not just drones, body
Yeah,
armor, ammunition. They're
yeah,
logistics. I mean,
yeah.
military
Not
logistics.
not stuff that families are buying for their soldiers at the front, right? Off of it, like you could do off of Amazon. This was actually military movement of
Yep.
logistics.
Yep.
And like they started using cargo trucks and cargo ships to launch drones from and all of that. This is more civilian cover things. So Russia started going after Nova Pochta in a big way, and this was they're extremely angry about that because they were getting some good use out of that. So that then we're like, well, we're going to go after wild berries. And someone's like, but they aren't actually using wild berries like we were using Nova Pochta. Shut up. You can see it there. We can find some excuse. Somebody bought a piece of body armor for their family off of wild berries and transported there, and that's our justification, right? The same kind of thing that would make any Amazon, and anything. It is not the same thing. But the Kiev regime obviously decided, for PR value and in their own twisted minds to try to make it.
Do you think that was a Kiev regime, or do you think that was the Rubio regime via the Kiev regime?
I
Or is there a
I
difference?
think there's different levels of things going on. When they're talking distribution of the Kiev regime's Western provided armaments for Western planned offensives across the country, I'm sure that the distribution probably happens at a local level. That is one thing that might not be micromanaged by Washington. So, but regardless, Russia started hitting it. So that's another reason for hitting wild berries. And again, someone came up with the idea that this would have some kind of psychological blow because the Russian people are so soft and so spoiled that if they can't get their Korean slug cream, whatever, for their faces, cosmetic cream that I don't know, Koreans put some weird stuff and
Oh
some
yeah, there's
some
slugs.
women.
There's actual slugs.
Yeah,
I know this because
yeah, it's
yeah,
it's I don't even want to go
family
there. But anyway,
members use it.
um,
Certain ones.
my wife works in marketing, cosmetics marketing, so I get some of the grisly details that I don't want to know anything about. Anyway, that that this would crush the soul of the Russian people. And again, this fantasy. Russia has waged a pretty heavy, increasingly heavy air campaign, right, against Ukraine for years now. And that hasn't broken the Ukrainian people, right, who are, let's face it, used to suffering. They they never got out of the 90s. They've been in a state of suffering for decades now. But the idea that the Russians would be so emotionally or psychologically affected because Wildberries was being hit. I mean, I, there's some
Man, it's wild
twisted
berries.
people. Yeah, that. Yeah, anyway, so they continue. As of this week, they're still trying to hit Wildberries, and
Well, having just driven back 1,400 kilometers, I can tell you wild berries trucks are everywhere. They just went back. They forget that, wild berries used to do dispersed
yeah,
small
yeah,
warehouse before they consolidated. They just went right back to it.
they'll just go. They just went back to it. I mean, my wife just got something from Wildberries this week, and she got it next day. So I mean, obviously they're not having that much problem. So anyway, it, I don't. I understand if you're a small business person, right, who makes stuff in their own apartment and sells it via Wildberries to people all over the country and everything you had went up in a warehouse. Yeah, I imagine it's a personal tragedy and all of that. But
But the Iron
I'm
Lady is actually
yeah,
giving away paying people compensation for what they
yeah,
lost.
yeah,
So
she and the government is helping Wildberries,
yeah,
right, with refashioning their logistics, their distribution. So I look at this as a strategic level, right? Yes, every death is a personal tragedy, blah, blah, blah. I'm worried about the geopolitical, the strategic level. And if they're wasting their shots off of an e-market warehouse instead of trying to hit a real target that could actually have a real effect on this war, I'm I'm just eating popcorn. I mean,
Yeah.
this is an existential war against NATO. All right. That's ultimately the way I look at it. And if they're wasting what shots they do have on that, well, this week Russia, on the other hand, has much greater capacity to be, shall we say, luxurious with their targeting. And Russia now in this last week started going not just after Novopochta warehouses that were legitimately being used to move military goods around. Russia now, in reply, started hitting every commerce marketplace in Ukraine, in Kiev, in West Ukraine, everywhere. And I I just saw this, hundreds of thousands of square meters of warehouse space has just gone up in July as a
Yep.
result of Russia's strikes now. So whatever discriminating sense that Russia previously had on that is now gone. And now they're targeting, you're going to hit our civilian warehouse. Fine, we'll hit yours too. That's the way it is now. And much more important out of than all of this is this finally lifted whatever moral restraints that the Russian military had about Odessa. And the piecemeal long range strike blockade of Odessa,
Hmm.
where Russia was occasionally with missiles or drones intercepting ships that it knew were transiting military supplies, and everything's transiting military supplies. I've seen the videos. They dump out whole things full of grain and pull the military equipment out that was hidden in the grain, and it was sealed in plastic and everything. I mean, they do it with everything, and of course, that was always part of all this nonsense. But remember, for
Shocking.
years there was no attacks on commercial shipping in the
Yep.
Black Sea. There was all of these grain deals and everything. And then in really the last year already, first they started going after Russian oil tankers, right? And the CIA bragged that they were the ones behind it all, directing it on the pages of the New York Times and everything. But then in the last 2 months, they started going after Russian grain ships and Russian ferries. And now Russia's restraint is gone. And they have instituted a real systemic, not only blockade, but destruction blockade.
Oh yeah.
And not only of Odessa, but Odessa, Chornomorsk, Nikolaev, Yuzhny, even Ismail, all the Black Sea ports. Nothing gets in or out anymore. Nothing. They hit every single ship, Turkish ship, Liberian flag, doesn't make any difference. Everything is being hit, going in and out. And they, every single day, they target piecemeal, piece by piece by piece. They're destroying all of the port infrastructure of all of these ports. It goes on an every single day basis. Every day there's a list that comes out of the damage, and for weeks now, I've seen it. And this is going to have, I believe, a more powerful effect and shorten the length of this conflict than anything Russia has done so far.
Yep.
And still, what happens on the front line is the most important, right? Because that's the irreversible facts on the ground. But in comparison to all of the other long range strikes Russia has done so far in this conflict for years, it all pales in comparison.
Yep.
And it
Yep.
was this bullshit 40-day campaign that they thought would force Russia to surrender and give up that removed whatever restraints that diplomatic, moral, whatever it was that the Russian government was operating, saying, okay, well, we can't stop everything going into Odessa. No, now it's gone. That is removed. There's no hesitation, and whatever Lavrov is asked about something about, he literally snarls at them at the Western journalists, and um,
You know what amazes me is continued absolute lack, and this hits from the Ukrainians even more so, of understanding the Russian mentality.
yeah,
I mean, you could excuse the Americans; they don't understand the guys next state over are thinking, let alone what somebody on their side of the world. But the Ukrainians, you would think, would understand of all the people in this conflict.
because they're not really Ukrainians anymore.
Right. Well, they're Russians to begin with, the majority of them. Slightly mentally deranged, but uh, but it goes back for example when some of the Azov criminals they gave testimony that Zelensky gave them orders to murder the POWs, mutilate the bodies, and then take videos of it to break Russian morale. Hello. If you want to up Russian recruitment, volunteer recruitment by tenfold, go ahead and do that. And they did, and they did. But it just amazes me. After 4 years, they still have no concept who they're dealing with.
They don't. They've made the same mistakes, and they made the same mistakes again with Iran.
Yeah.
So it's part the in the Western government and the greater blob, right? The foreign policy elite, whether we're talking the State Department, the intelligence services, the think tanks, the academia, right? The ivory tower, all of their Russia, China, Iran, etc. experts, right? These people are anti-Russia, China, Iran ideologues.
Yep.
And they do not have a realistic understanding of these societies and peoples. They have a caricature image of them. This is relying on Michael McFaul for advice about Russia, who has been wrong about, I mean, him and people like him suffuse them. I was in the U.S. military. I studied at the London School of Economics in London, doing my postgraduate in international relations there. I know the way these people think. I read all of the required reading, all the article, everything they say about Russia. It's all nonsense,
Oh yeah.
right? And it's all part of this caricature, ideological driven vision of these countries that they have. So that's why they continually get things wrong, because
Wait.
these are the people that are advising them that if you just drop a few more bombs on Iran, the Iranian people will rise up and overthrow the hated mullahs that roll over them.
Are you trying to tell me? Are you honestly, intellectually trying to tell me that Boris and Natasha were not atypical Russian characters?
That is almost as nonsense as the actual situation is. It is. I mean,
I wonder how many
but
people
this
caught
is
that reference.
yeah, that's dating
Oh
yourself
yeah, yeah,
a
I
bit
big
there.
time.
But I mean, this has been the same type of Navalny, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya bullshit that's been going on for decades, just now being played out with a military geostrategic aspect played into it. And it has led them to disaster in Ukraine, to a strategic defeat of the West in Ukraine, almost inevitable, and
Yep.
to a much faster strategic defeat of the U.S. In Iran, in the Middle East.
Over under NATO does something stupid.
They do.
No, I'm talking about to escalate.
Yeah.
Um,
So anyway, Odessa, before the conflict, even during the conflict, up until this last year, 80% of Ukraine's exports go through the Black Sea ports.
yep.
80%, which means what? That the EU is going to have to cop up another 50 to 60 billion euros a year to keep the regime afloat, because they were already more than matching. Yes, but if you remove all of that, because they can't get out more than 10% of the grain and the sunflower oil and the rapeseed and the iron ore, right? You can't move that stuff by train in significant quantities. And all of the agricultural products, remember the problems we already had at the beginning of this conflict when you started dumping cheap Ukrainian agricultural products in Poland and Romania and
Oh
elsewhere?
yeah.
The local farmers, were absolutely up in arms because their livelihoods were destroyed overnight, right? And that caused all kinds of political problems. Well, that will become a problem again in the coming months.
Yep.
And it will still only be a fraction of what the Kiev regime can get out. And they did this to themselves. They went after Russian commercial shipping first, and now Russia has no compunctions left about doing the same in kind, and this is going to be huge economic damage to the Kiev regime. And a lot of people don't understand. They're losing, at least I saw a ballpark figure of $70 million a day. I think it's ultimately going to be higher than that.
Yeah, and then let's add to the fact that the Europeans, A, are looking at about a 40% decrease in harvest. So maybe they're going to need all that
Yeah.
Ukrainian anything that they can dump on the market because no fertilizer, no green revolution. B, the underground storage facilities that are supposed to be at 90+% by EU decree by the end of summer, well, maybe mid-fall or around the 2030 mark. And now what do you do? No energy in the winter. Food is short. EU is what's the word I'm looking for?
We have a colloquial expression where I'm from, uh, bumfuck Pennsylvania, coal country Pennsylvania. You may have heard it. It's called up Shit's Creek without a paddle.
Yes, I have. In the South, we got the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
applies quite
Appalachia,
well.
right? That,
Yep.
that that part of Pennsylvania is effectively part of the South.
Oh, maybe that explains why Mertz isn't too upset that he may be leaving on the 10th. Uh,
Yeah.
get out, get out before the mob comes in there with pitchforks and torches to hang somebody.
So the reality is there has been a tidal change, right, in the Ukrainian conflict, but it's not the one that they were expecting when they began this 40-day bullshit long range strike campaign. It's something very different now. And if I know a lot of people are no longer paying attention to what's happening on the front line, but you really should, because Russia rolled up 12 settlements last week all along the conflict line, and they're on a pace for at least another 10 this week. And things are collapsing fast.
Oh, very much so. So I know we're running short on time. Let me ask you this one quick question. Laura Loomer, the woman of unfortunate looks, the
Hmm?
the Laura Loomer.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, if she didn't have direct access to I want to say Jeb Bush, but I'm sorry, to Trump, nobody would give a damn or about her unfortunate looks. Um, did you watch any of that
No, I
whore fest?
no, no.
Oh,
Sorry, I just refuse to.
she's
I mean,
now
that's like watching a B horror movie, right? I mean, I know that certain people get a certain kind of visceral, revolting thrill out of it, but
I was thinking more like a B or C grade German porno flick
no,
with subpar actors.
I'll take your word for it.
I've been to German. Yeah, when I got to Germany, the guys like Stas, go in one of these porno stores and take a look around. Like, I know everything. Like, no, 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 just go in. It was what VHS tapes and CDs were just coming out. So you had big covers. You could do a lot. And you start looking like, holy crap. I thought no, 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 thank you. Um, she's now the darling of the Western press after her $2 million bonus for I guess servicing Zelensky. I don't know how else to put it.
I evidently she even exchanged hugs and kisses with "I'm not a Nazi Belitsky." I
Oh
mean,
yeah, I love that. Oh no, no, that she had a great line. Well, don't you think the symbolism is just it could cause some problems? You know, the little SS marks and everything else. The lightning bolts. The swastikas, half of them have tattooed on their bodies. You know,
I mean, this
that
is
bad.
literally a guy who proclaimed the Ukrainians as the ideological descendants of the Aryans to fight the Mongoloid hordes of Russia. I mean, just straight up Nazi racist bullshit. I mean, whatever. It's sickening. If I understand that just a year ago she was writing completely opposite things that actually there was actually some truth among it.
Oh yeah,
So I mean, how much was she paid?
2 million,
How much was she paid for this flip?
2 million.
2 million?
Akhmatov,
Yeah.
Akhmatov brought her and paid her 2 million. Ah, yeah,
Somebody did.
yeah,
Somebody
yeah.
did.
Oh, it broke. It broke. There was Akhmatov, the former oligarch of Donetsk Oblast. He's still a little upset that his mines were all taken away from him, and he was, run out on a rail.
Woohoo.
Yeah,
Crimea River.
exactly. So yeah, yeah, yeah. It was 2 million. So I guess 2 million shines a lot of light for some people. Yeah.
When you've there's a sunk cost fallacy involved. When that woman has obviously disfigured herself with so much plastic surgery that she has become revolting to look at, you just have to keep digging your hole even further. And I guess that's pretty expensive.
I'm pretty sure she was revolting to look at from the very beginning.
Yeah. Well,
Uh, yeah,
it, it just becomes more of a wax sculpture horror show as time goes on.
it does. It does. And we're ending on a good note. Happy. Well, maybe not a happy note, but a funny note at least. You
Gives
either
me the
laugh or
heebie
you
jeebies.
cry. It's better to laugh. The absurdity of
All of this
humanity.
is noise, right? It 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 all of it passes,
It
you
does.
know.
Which amazes me that the hardcore fans and fanatics of Zelensky and all of this, no matter how
Do you
many
remember that
times,
transvestite that they used to have doing
yeah,
the PR for the Kiev regime? Whatever happened to that one?
the U.S. military told them to, or the U.S. government under Biden told them to get rid of him because
Wow.
he was an American, B, he was former U.S. military, and C, he was the crap he was saying. Even the Biden administration couldn't stomach. You
Well,
know?
Laura Loomer is the new whatever that was.
Maybe it's the same guy.
Whatever.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for joining the call. Hope everybody enjoyed it. If you have questions or anything, leave a comment. And the over/under that Laura Loomer is a guy. Have at it. Let's do a vote.
I'm not gonna touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Well, we'll let the audience decide. I'm not saying one way or the other. I have no idea. I have opinions, but I have no idea on that subject. Thank you, everybody. Cheers.
Get out there to the audience. This is what happens when you get two Russian Americans who move back to the motherland and then shoot the shit about the war for an hour. This train wreck is what happens.
But people like the train wreck.
Yeah.
Every train wreck. I mean, you can look at the Trump administration regime as a train wreck. But the problem with train wreck is you can't pull your eyes away. You know what's going to happen. Every single trade car's flying off. You know what's going to happen, but you can't stop looking.
And you start chewing Laura Loomer's fat.
Oh, yeah, no, no, that, no, that's not, that may be a German thing. I don't know. But that's a bridge too far. Akhmatov's not paying us enough or anything for
Somebody
that matter.
somebody should pay us something.
I know. Right. Wait a minute. You didn't get your bag of cash from Vladimir Vladimirovich. Putin
I
didn't
I
take.
I I'm still waiting for the ruble and the mail, more than a decade down the line. So
Oh, he pulls me in once every couple months, just throws a bag of money at me. Says, "I don't even know what we do. We just throw a bag of money together. Here, have some money." He, I think Newsweek wrote something like that about me. I got breakfast with Putin. I don't know if he even knows I exist, but apparently he throws me bags of money just just
yeah, sure.
just for fun, exercise routine. Here, have another bag. Have another bag. So, thank you, thank you, Mark. And the train wreck
Next
keeps
time, son.
going.
Catch you next time, Stanislav.
Absolutely.